Human wants are virtually infinite. We always desire more. But the resources required to actually fulfill those desires, our time, land, labor, and physical materials, are strictly finite. This mathematical tension between infinite wants and finite resources is called scarcity. It acts as the ultimate bottleneck for any economy, placing a hard physical limit on what a society can produce. You can see the extreme limits of this bottleneck by looking at early pioneers. If every individual had to build their own home, grow their own crops, and sew their own clothes from scratch, society would produce very little, at an enormous cost of time. Yet look at the era we live in now. Despite that universal bottleneck, we are surrounded by massive abundance, flooded with cheap electronics, fast food, and highly complex goods. How did businesses outmaneuver the strict limitations of scarcity? They survive by pulling three specific operational levers to aggressively widen the bottleneck of production. The first strategic lever is the division of labor. In 1776, economist Adam Smith became the first to comprehensively document this concept in his book, The Wealth of Nations. Smith observed a baseline metric in manufacturing. A single worker attempting to build a metal pin from scratch could only produce about 20 pins in an entire day, largely because they constantly had to switch between different tasks. The strategic shift happens when you divide that exact same production process into 18 highly specialized individual tasks and assign each task to a different worker. Because workers can focus on specific advantages and learn their single step much faster, a team of just 10 workers can suddenly produce 48,000 pins in a single day. Modern manufacturing scales this concept by breaking complex products down into hundreds of highly specialized job classifications on an assembly line. By dividing the labor, a business drastically multiplies its total volume of output without needing a proportional increase in raw human resources. The second lever is input substitution. In economics, scarcity dictates price. When a specific resource is scarce in a given region, it costs more to acquire. Businesses constantly monitor the prices of what they need to operate, their inputs. Specifically, they weigh the cost of paying human workers against the cost of running automated machinery. If a company operates where human labor is scarce and expensive, they will substitute workers with heavy machinery to protect their profit margins. But when that exact same company opens a location in a country where labor is plentiful and cheap, they will abandon the expensive automated technology and pivot back to using human workers. Businesses are not loyal to one particular production method. They survive by dynamically swapping their inputs to conserve whichever resource currently happens to be the most expensive and scarce. Once the cheapest technology is found, a business attacks scarcity by aggressively growing the physical size of its operations, pulling the third lever, economies of scale. This chart maps the average cost of production against the quantity produced. It shows the core rule of economies of scale. As the total quantity of output goes up, the average cost to produce each individual unit goes down. At point S, a small plant producing 30 toaster ovens bears an average cost of $30 per unit. But look at the financial impact of scaling up. Following the curve down to point L, increasing production to 150 units drops the unit cost to just $10. Massive output absorbs the burden of cost. The physical geometry of the real world drives this cost reaction. Take a standard chemical pipe. Doubling the material used to build the pipe's circumference actually holds 4 times the volume of chemicals inside. Giant industrial plants and massive warehouse stores dominate the economy because large-scale infrastructure creates a mathematical advantage. It allows society to multiply its output volume far beyond the increase in the materials required to build it. The massive shape of modern business is not a random occurrence, but a direct evolutionary response to the constant crushing pressure of resource scarcity. But there is a breaking point to this strategy, called diseconomies of scale. This occurs when a firm successfully scales up, but grows entirely too large to effectively manage. Economists call this the Leviathan effect. Communication across the sprawling enterprise breaks down. Excessive layers of management create unnecessary friction, workflow is disrupted, and as a result, the per-unit cost actually begins to rise again. To survive this structural inefficiency, the bloated business is forced to step back and shrink its operations down to a mathematically optimal size. The global economy is a continuous balancing act. Businesses do not grow purely for the sake of growth. They are constantly shifting these three strategic levers: dividing labor, substituting inputs, and scaling size, to squeeze the maximum possible value out of a world where absolutely everything is limited.